Been a while. Don't even know where to start. Hi, my name is Lorena. Welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back if you've been here for a while and you've been waiting on a new video. My channel is focused around teaching you my method for changing your self-concept, your perception of yourself, your self-image, and your state of being in order to recreate your reality, to manifest a new reality for yourself. And we do this through a really holistic and emotionally integrated approach. I've been a bit MIA for the past few weeks because I've just been super busy preparing new content for other platforms and working on my coaching program, but I'm back. I'm getting back to it. And I wanted to start this off with a little manifestation success story. Probably you'll see in the title, I'm not sure what I'll title this video yet, but probably you'll see in the title what it's about. I have told a shorter version of this story a few times, but I wanted to make it really extensive now. And it's the story of how I manifested the healing of my cat who was diagnosed with cancer last year. So I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, what the circumstances were, what I did, and how he healed. And I'm not just telling the story to show you, oh, look what I manifested. I'm telling you the story in detail, step by step, so you can see that it doesn't come without challenges, that it's not magic as much as the end result feels like a miracle. It's not. It all made logical, natural sense looking back at it. And I'm sure that the story will give you some insights to your own situation. If you're currently in a challenging situation, if you're in a situation where you'd like to manifest something completely differently to what the outcome currently looks like, this video is for you. So I'm going to preface this by saying that I've had my cat Otis for about 2 years now, so not very long. He's turning 11 this year in a couple of months. He's never had any health issues until I got him. I adopted him in August 2020, and I have to say that from the moment I got him, I had been in fear. I think it partly came from a fear of me wanting to be a good mom and having the fear that, you know, I suddenly have this responsibility. What if I mess this up? But it was also because Otis developed pretty severe allergies, and at the time I didn't know what these symptoms were. I would just run to the vet at every sign of him being unwell, even if it was nothing, because I was in such a survival mode with this. I was so in fight or flight because I wanted to do it right so desperately. You also have to bear in mind this was at a time where the world was literally locked down, so I was alone a lot, just by default, as many of us were. I want to share this part of the story because it's really key for you to know that I had developed this attachment almost to the point of a codependency, because part of the story is not just how I healed my cat, how I manifested his cancer away, but it's also how it came about. And another essential part of the story to show you how this came about and how I had to deal with it later on is that in August, September, I got really sick, and that time brought a lot of emotions and fears up for me. That was a time of deep shadow work for me, simply because I had no other choice. Everything that was in my subconscious kind of came to the surface. And one of the fears that I had to face during this time was the fear of being alone. Again, kind of follows the same pattern of what I was dealing with in 2020. I felt very isolated, and I felt at the time when I was really ill, really unsupported by the friends and partners in my life. I came face to face with that, and the attachment to Otis grew even more because he was then, for the 10 days I was isolating, you can guess what I caught, the only living being near me. Fast forward 2 months, I went on holiday with a friend, and when I came back over the course of the week, Otis slowly stopped eating. I got concerned. He stopped eating, he stopped using his litter box. We went to the vet and they kept him overnight because they found out that he was severely anemic. I had no idea how bad it was. I had just come back from holiday and he got admitted to hospital for about 4 nights. And it was so bad, he was so anemic that they didn't know if he would make it. And I was in shock because you have to imagine, I just came back from holiday. I didn't know this would happen. I was just, you know, chilling, and then suddenly I was faced with the potential loss of who I see as my best friend. So he was in hospital, he had 2 blood transfusions, and he just made it. But during this time, during these 4 days, I was a wreck. I don't even remember most of that weekend because I was disassociating the entire weekend because I was in so much fear. My nervous system was so activated, I couldn't think straight. I don't remember anything pretty much. I remember crying a lot, and I remember speaking to my family a lot and not knowing what to do. One thing that I do remember is that I really had to face the possibility of losing him. And I really cried so much about it, and I felt the loss, the grief, fully, as if he had already died. And it was awful. It was awful. I'm honestly now at a point where I feel like I know what it feels like to lose him because I've already internally felt it. I've already processed all of these emotions. After 4 days of terror for me, anxiety, survival mode, grief, shadow work, facing my fear, he came home. But we still didn't know what the cause was because I had decided not to go ahead and explore this because their suggestion had been to put him under a general anesthetic. But at the time he was so weak that I didn't want to risk that because I feared that he just wouldn't wake up. And I thought it was safer to blindly medicate him. He was doing better, it was all fine. And then 2 weeks later, I get a call from the hospital. Because in the meantime, whilst he was at the hospital, they had done all these tests that they sent to a lab, and the test results had come back. And they had confirmed that he had lymphoma, cancer, end stadium. A really aggressive type of cancer that had spread from his spleen and his liver all the way through his blood, which is how the anemia developed. And I was in shock again, faced with the possibility of losing him again. I have to say, despite the fact that I cried probably just as much this time and was faced with just as much grief, I already noticed myself being a lot calmer, a lot more collected, a lot more surrendered because I knew I couldn't drive myself crazy over this. I needed to feel what I needed to feel, but I couldn't sit here and fight it. They gave him 2 weeks to live. 2 weeks. There wasn't a lot of time. I basically already assumed he's not going to make it. This was not a case of me convincing myself that he's fine and ignoring my reality, and that's how he magically healed. I think manifestation success stories like these, especially in such severe cases where it's such an emotionally charged topic, are quite unrealistic. Of course, at the root of it, that's how it works. You know, you have to immerse yourself in the feeling of it being done, of, in this case, him being healed. But it's not as simple as just making an assumption and then it's done, because you're going to think the opposite. You're going to believe the opposite. Everything in your reality, all of your senses show you the opposite. Your emotions are here. You can't think them away. So the doctor suggested a few different treatment options. One of them being just leaving him on the steroids, which would mean he would definitely die in 2 weeks, because that's not treatment. That's just to make his life as nice as possible for the remainder of the time that he has. And then the other 3 options were all chemotherapy options, which I at the time didn't want to go for because I felt like that would be a really harsh treatment for a cat. It's harsh for a human. I didn't want to put that on him. So I assumed that was it. But then I meditated on it and I sat with it. And I sat with him as well. So I didn't feel like I was making the decision. I honestly felt like listening to my intuition to know whether he wanted to live or whether he wanted to go. And I just got this strong feeling, this isn't it. This is not over. We're not giving up. And it didn't come from a place of resistance. It didn't, because I had already felt the potential loss. I had already made peace with the prospect of losing him. I had already dealt with these emotions and I had already felt that grief. So the decision, no, we're not giving up, didn't come from a place of resistance, from a place of, I need to keep him because for my sake. It didn't come from an egoic place. It came from an intuitive knowing of, this isn't over. He's got longer to live. This is not the end of his life. So I decided to try one of the chemotherapy options, very much the softest one, the one with the least chances for remission. But that was the one that I felt was the best. So again, very much listened to my intuition here. Didn't have an attachment to an outcome because the entire time I knew that if he was suffering through this treatment, I would stop the treatment and make sure he has a nice quality of life, not necessarily a quantity of life. So we started doing chemotherapy treatment. After I had made that decision, you know, I was still in fear. I was still feeling the emotions, but something really magical happened once I had really processed all of the emotions and made complete peace with the prospect of losing him. I woke up the next morning and I just had this strong feeling of, it's done. He's going to heal. And this made no sense. This made no sense at all, no logical sense. I remember the oncologist who gave him 2 weeks to live said, this is not curable. It can get better if we're lucky, but this is not curable. And I was like, I don't believe you. He's going to heal. I just know it. But I say I know it. I didn't know it. I just felt it intuitively. But I was also okay with the opposite outcome because I had already faced that and knew what that would feel like. The next few months were very stressful and very expensive. Chemotherapy for a cat is not cheap. Although I have to say there was some resistance towards spending this money as well. But as soon as I decided this is the only option, I instantly made the money back. So this is the thing, when you invest with trust, you make it back. I always like to say money loves it when you trust it. Otis was okay. You know, his chemotherapy went all right. He had some side effects, but nothing major. I really didn't know what the outcome would be. Otis was getting tested every so often to see what was happening to the cancer cells. And one day I got a call from the oncologist. And he said to me, we took samples of his liver and his spleen, and there are no cancerous cells to be found. 0. They couldn't find any. And since, I believe, a month ago, he's officially in clinical remission, as they say. I say he's healed, but you know. And when they told me there's no cancerous cells to be found anymore, I was not surprised. It was the only thing that really made sense. And this is what it means to live in the end, my loves. It's not tricking yourself to believe something that you don't. It's not denying your circumstances. It's not resisting another outcome. It's making it so natural for yourself to feel into that it just becomes the only logical conclusion. And it comes from a place of full surrender. You might still be confused, or you might think this was a lot and a lot of back and forth and a lot of details. So I just want to break down the key things I did or that this whole story taught me. Number 1, There's a lesson in everything. This did not come out of nowhere. I want to make clear, I am not saying I caused this or this is my fault. I don't believe that. But what I do believe is that it reflected my fear of being alone, and it gave me the opportunity to face that fear. Not only did I face the fear of losing him, I faced the fear of being alone, which, by the way, ever since, I have let go of these friendships and these relationships that weren't serving me anymore. I have let go of so many things, and the relationships and connections in my life have changed so much for the better. And this happened because I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. So it impacted other areas of my life too, because I faced this fear. And I would not have faced this fear if this circumstance hadn't shown up in such a severe way, in such a scary way, because it forced me to face it. If you are faced with dire circumstances or the opposite of what you want is showing up, it's an opportunity. It's what needs to happen for you to face it. Because if you don't, if it didn't show up, you're never going to face it, and you're never going to learn the lesson. You're never going to know how to navigate that. And if you don't know how to navigate that, how do you want to end up at the end result? You need duality and polarity. You need contrast in order to cherish it. In order to fully experience it, you need to know its opposite. Number 2 is surrender. Surrender and facing fears. I did both of these things. It gave me no choice, to be honest. I really confronted the possibility of my worst fear at the time. And I felt it. I felt it fully. And I felt it to the point where I accepted it. And I fully surrendered to it. And this is why I'm such a big fan of shadow work. It makes the unconscious conscious, and it helps you face the things that you don't want to face, including your worst fears. And the magic is that once you do that, once you stop resisting it, but you really confront it, it gets smaller, because it's only big, it's only scary when you resist it, when you accept it, when you surrender to it. It loses its significance. So that's what happened. I fully felt it and I fully surrendered to it. I was not resisting the outcome that I wanted the least, but that non-resistance enabled me to focus on the outcome that I did want, which is the third point. I did focus on what I did want. I did visualize. I did feel into what it would be like for the oncologist to tell me he was healed, which is actually exactly what unfolded. He said exactly the sentences I imagined, but I didn't deny what was happening in between. I just felt that without attachment to it needs to happen this way. I just felt it for the sake of it. It just made sense. And that is the next point, is that it just felt natural because of that. I had practiced this imaginal act, if you want to call it that, so much. And by much, I don't mean quantity. I mean, I had immersed myself into it this much. It just became natural. Through it becoming natural, when the news came, when it unfolded, it just made sense. So I know this was a really long story, but I think it's a really damn powerful one. Remember this. Remember to face your fears, don't avoid them. Remember to find gratitude in the unfolding, because it happens for a reason. There is a purpose in everything. Remember that surrender is so important, because you can only resist what you think is real. The more you resist something, the more you make it real. Live in the end for the sake of it. Allow yourself to feel it, immerse yourself into it. Don't get attached to the outcome. Focus on it, feel it, but be okay no matter what. Because you are going to be okay no matter what. And the less you resist what you don't want, the more likely it is for what you do want to come in, because it has the space to arrive. So I hope you enjoyed this. I love you very much. I'm going to try and make my videos more regular again. If you have any video requests, please let me know. I'm happy to consider anything. Can't make any promises, but I'll consider it. Make sure you follow me on Instagram. It's where I am the most active and where I go live regularly and where you can send me direct messages and we can connect, because I actually love connecting with you all one-on-one. I'll see you next time.